Hi, Carolyn. How are you?
Hi, Asad. I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm perfectly fine. So, how's your Friday going on? Since it's probably the very beginning of your weekend, so any plan for the weekend?
I have a photo shoot on Sunday, actually. I'm really looking forward to. I love video and photo shoots and being on set, so looking forward to that.
Awesome, awesome. That's awesome. So, Caroline, before we get into the conversation, I would love to have a little bit of introduction for the audience, and if you can spot the light on your journey, that would be awesome. Over to you.
Great, yeah. Currently, I am a co-founder and the president and chief creative officer of a creative agency called Humanity. We launched Humanity about 5 years ago. But previous to that, my background has been in the creative side, so working at various design shops, advertising agencies, branding, things like that. And yeah, it's been quite the journey with Humanity the past 5 years, but really loving the work that we do, the clients that we have, and helping bring their big ideas and their visions to life.
Awesome. So, Caroline, very, very brief and very interesting journey. So, before we again jump into the conversation, what bring you to design actually? Like, what did you thought when you were trying out different maybe passions or when you were looking for the future professions? What did you thought when you were coming to design?
Yeah, I mean, all growing up, I always was very involved in the arts. So I was in the band, I took drama, I took art as well. So was very interested in somewhere in there. And then it was an art teacher that introduced me to graphic design, and it seemed the most viable in getting a job after school. So I initially took a design foundations program in Toronto at Humber College, and that went through. It was a lot of fine art, but they also went into different types of design. So there was a graphic design course, there was an interior design course, industrial design, packaging design. So you could really get a feel of all the different options of being a designer and where you wanted to go. And graphic design was the one for me. So I then took a 2-year graphic design and advertising program also at Humber. And then even at the end of that, we had to tailor our portfolios to either be in more design or more advertising. And at that time, I was still very much focused on design and branding. And so for probably the first 10 years of my career, that's where I really focused on and working at design shops and branding shops. And then it was a couple of years later that I got a job as a senior designer in a bigger networked advertising agency. And that gave me the opportunity to work more on art direction, to be part of photo shoots and to be part of campaigns, and conceptually more thinking about campaigns and ideation that way. And I really loved it. I think it was a nice evolution to what I'd been doing for so long. So I really, really enjoyed that. And then when Humanity gives me the opportunity to do it all. Humanity is a full service creative agency. So now I can kind of apply everything that I've learned from both more the advertising art direction side to that design branding side.
Awesome. So when did you decide of basically starting the Humanity, right? Because again, being a creative person or a designer, when you are transitioning between different kind of jobs to actually getting the exposure, when do you think a creative should start, or when did you start the thinking about the Humanity?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a mix of working at agencies or being freelance. There was a period of time there, probably a couple of years, where I was just freelancing at agencies or having my own clients that I worked from home on. And so I think that's one of the good things about being a designer or a creative is that you do have that flexibility. Even if you do have a full-time job, you've got that flexibility of taking on freelance clients as well. So, I mean, I would recommend it to any creative, really. Although I do think it is, especially when you're just starting out, if you can get in at an agency, you're just going to learn so much. And if they have a creative director there, they have more senior designers, senior staff, you will learn a lot. And I think that's really, really important. And even just the way that projects works is very different from school. The whole process is not like the real world. So if you can get in at an agency, even just starting to work with clients, learning how to speak to clients, presenting, all of that, you can get that great experience working at an agency. Not to say that you can't be freelance when you first come out as well, but I think it is really good to get that foundation. So I worked at a small design agencies for several years before I went freelance or even started doing freelance. So I think that knowledge really helped a lot. And then I went back to being full-time for probably about 6-7 years when we decided to launch Humanity. And it was interesting because Humanity probably isn't a typical founder type story. I was working at a very well established experiential agency actually, up until the pandemic had hit. And the owner of that experiential agency, very entrepreneurial when the pandemic hit, very much finding new ways of new lines of business. He founded a couple of not-for-profits as well. And we just decided it was the right time to start an agency like Humanity that could offer services that the experiential agency didn't offer. And that's kind of the moment in time, the opportunity to launch a new agency. And then when it came to Humanity, myself on the creative side, having had a lot of experience and bringing the best and knowing some of the worst of the things that I had experienced over my career and wanting to create that ideal working environment, that ideal agency. And then working with the head of strategy that was at that experiential agency at that time as well, one of the other co-founders of Humanity. He had done a lot of work in behavioral science and throughout his career. So it was kind of bringing the three of us between the lead of or the founder of the experiential agency, myself on creative, and the other co-founder on strategy. Kind of the three of us were able to really launch this and build this vision. And especially at that time, so this was summer of 2020, and really where the world was at was we just saw an agency that was bringing more humanity to the industry. Looking at other agencies at that time, the agency landscape, and they were either talking about data or they were talking about creative, but there was a missing humanity there. And that's where we saw bringing that behavioral science and that behavioral science understanding and understanding how people think, not just what they think, so that we could help brands connect to them better and understand them on a more human level. And at that time, really understanding how brands could benefit people's well-being. We believe in every human is in the pursuit of well-being and releasing or addressing those tensions that occur in their lives. And so how can we help brands fit into that somewhere authentically? How can they fit into that? And that's where we use a lot of our behavioral science thinking. And then all of that thinking and that clarity really helps and feeds into our creative. So whether that is a new brand, visual, verbal identity, or maybe it's an ad campaign and how we have to message or speak to people.
That's very interesting. So again, we covered more of like your story of being into the design industry. Then we have like, again, very briefly and very interestingly covered more of like when did you thought of starting the Humanity, right? So now we are in the chapter of you being in the leadership position, definitely managing a team and handling the challenges on the way, right? So what are the most occurring challenges that you face in your leadership position with your team? Like how do you first which challenges do you face and then how you come up to tackle it?
Some of the challenges I would say, in the beginning, we were launching a brand new agency, a brand new company in summer of 2020, thick into lockdowns and being in Toronto as well. Toronto was one of the longest lockdown cities in the world. So it was a very challenging time to launch a new business. And I would say as well, for me, and a lesson that I learned, being a creative throughout my whole career, I hadn't done a lot of networking. I hadn't built a network really. I was all focused on the work. And so when we launched this new agency and we couldn't go to networking events, we couldn't meet people in person. And so solely relying on LinkedIn networks and online networks, I quickly realized I didn't have much of one. So that was an initial challenge for me, just to start building my network, which I have really focused on the past 5 years. I would say another challenge for me in launching Humanity was that I didn't know the business side of business. I didn't know what a P&L was. I didn't know what sales was. I didn't know what a pipeline was. All things I'm pretty well versed in now, but didn't know at the beginning. So I was very lucky. And again, Humanity launching in the way that it did, we are actually part of a collective. So we have shared services. So we had an already established, they've been around 25, 30 years, finance department, HR department. So while I still need to know those things, at least I, wasn't just going into it completely not knowing what to do with no support. So while a challenge in that there was a lot of things to learn, I did have that support. So that has been really great. So those were the biggest challenges, I think, when we launched. Since then, I mean, I would say it's the same thing, is just getting new business. And I think the industry in general, where it's gotten to, unless you're a big network shop, you have big AOR clients. But I think even that is changing in a lot of cases. It is much more project based. So you are just constantly, it's okay, what's the next project? It's constant new business. I relate it to a treadmill. You can't step off that treadmill. It's constantly going. So that is definitely a challenge, and making sure we're bringing that work in for people and to bringing work into the agency. Other challenges I would say is we are still a pretty small business, so at about 12 full-time people. But we cover all of the aspects. So we've got designers, branders, we've got a really amazing strategy team, data analysts, copywriters. So we can cover the gamut pretty much of everything, but it is making sure we're resourcing properly, making sure people aren't too overwhelmed, and where can we kind of shift things around, and people wearing more than one hat, and where can we kind of shift that around to make it a bit more manageable for everybody. But I think the team we've got, I mean, a lot of our team members have been with us since the beginning or very near the beginning, so they understand how things work. And we had a lot of people leave when we first started. And it just, the startup mentality, it was also weird times. It was COVID times, but I think everyone who is with us understands where we are. Still 5 years in, we're still kind of in startup mode and needing to wear lots of hats and be entrepreneurial. And I think everyone that we have understands that, which I very much appreciate. I've just been reflecting on that actually this past week. And everyone just really is all in, and how can we support one another and get work done and get the best level of work.
Awesome. So with your answer, I came to know like there are two things that I need to understand. First is the onboarding side, in which you still are like working constantly on. That is to bring more and more projects and then like work on them, right? And that is honestly a marathon that never ends, as far as you're running a company. So this is going to happen. Awesome. So the other thing is more of like the execution part of it, right? So once the client is onboarded, the project is onboarded, the problem is onboarded. So then you have to like probably allocate a resource, work closely with the team in order to bring the best execution to the problem that you actually got, right? And for that, I think there are people skills that are needed. There are some executional skills, again, depending on problem to problem, that are needed. So in that domain, in the execution part of it, what kind of the most challenges that you think you are currently facing or you have faced in the past, and how did you come up with the solutions for them?
Executional, I think for myself, having been able to get that experience for many years as a designer and even in production design, but then also having about 5-6 years working at a bigger advertising agency and working on campaigns, all of that has set me up to be able to oversee all of those types of projects and understand how much time it's going to take a designer or an art director, knowing that there is never just a button and the idea is there. Even with AI, if you're trying AI, it is a tool. So I understand but also the stress. I know, like as a designer, the stress of starting a project or starting a new branding exercise and not knowing where you're going to go, but that you will find your way through. It just takes time, and you can't really dictate. It comes at different times. So being able to work with the team on those challenges and trying to even educate others on the process and the time it takes to get to those good spots and to get to those meetings where everything is amazing and beautiful and looks great, the amount of work that actually goes into it, the amount of thinking that actually goes into it. So I think just my background has helped a lot in that sense. And then, yeah, like I said, I think at the agency, we've got most roles covered from strategy. We have a really strong strategy team that is able to really build that foundation and get that clarity that creative needs to do what they need to do. But then we also have built up a roster of some really close and really great partners. So video production, or whether it's website, back-end coding, we don't do that in-house either. So finding those partnerships that you trust and that you can bring in when needed.
Awesome, awesome. So I'm like trying to understand the manager's perspective or the leader's perspective, right? So when you're probably trying to put a new brand out there, right? You being having the years of experience and of course thousands of problems you have solved in your past, and of course you have like that big exposure. But when you're working, I can understand like currently the people you are working with are either experienced with you, so they have like those mutual understanding of how things gonna go and how things works at humanity. But other than that, even if, for example, there are new guys within your team, right? You recently hired them, and you don't have that kind of um, the data of them of how do they behave in certain type of situations. So you being the leader, how will you tackle these kind of challenges where they have again different backgrounds, you have different backgrounds, you have different ways of probably executing a problem or executing a solution of a problem, of course, and they have maybe even not exposed, or they have the different way of doing that. So how will you find a common ground or a common point where both of you are happy? It's a win-win situation for you both, and of course the frustrations that builds or the tension that builds while having the conflicts or maybe the change of interests. How do you like tackle these kind of situations?
Yeah, I think it's, I think it's in the hiring process as well, and really going through their work and talking to them about their projects, their, past work experience. And for me, it really is about their work. It doesn't, it's good to know maybe where they've worked in the past, but really it's about your work and your portfolio. So having those conversations up front when you're interviewing. And then once people start, I would say if they're more senior, staying open to new ways of working and improving perhaps how certain things that we do now, there's new ways of thinking, new ways to present things, staying open to how could some of these new ideas or processes fit into what we're already doing to improve what we're doing. If they're more junior, I would say it's working closely with them and making sure that not letting them run for too long on their own, and just keeping those close check-ins and talking through things to make sure that we are on the right path and we're not kind of going off into a path or wasting any time, going in directions that maybe aren't quite right. So we, like I said, we're a smaller team, and also I think the fact that we were born really in a remote world, we've become very good at working remotely. We do have a shared office space with our collective, and it's great to come together and be able to work in person. But I think we've also become very efficient at working and communicating remotely as well. We're not all in the same city as well. We do have people in Montreal and in Vancouver, and even just within Ontario. So it's making those modes of communication very, very open. So whether it's a quick Teams chat, a Slack chat, whatever the tool is, but just making sure we are very much in contact, and even just a quick 2-minute chat can really help keep projects on track, or keep projects on the right path, or even just thinking, just like, hey, I just had this thought, just wanted to run it by you. Just those quick moments, and making sure that we are being very collaborative across the agencies and across the functions, I think helps a lot with that. And trying to get our new staff onboarded. I think one of the differentiators of humanity is, and as I mentioned, is our strategy and our strategy thinking and our strategy team. I think what they do is much different than a lot of what bigger agency strategists do. So it's making sure as a team, as a group, we are working very closely so we can figure out those processes and that thinking.
Awesome. That actually sums up the answer that I was looking for. So talking of the internal challenges currently, right? So it will lead to like the external challenges, that is more of like the client side of challenges, right? So you being the designer or you being the creative person, we currently have maybe 2 or 3 categories of creative professionals, right? The first is who envisions the client vision and give them exactly what they wanted, not left, not right, nothing from like additional to it, right? Exactly what the client wanted. They tried to build that solution for them, and it worked, right? The other category is we have is those who understand the client's requirement and then bring their own solution to the table. Regarding it could be perfect, but they bring their own flavor to the solution. So what kind of designer are you, or a creative professional are you?
I mean, I think I'm probably both, and my background was both, and I think both are very needed. If you can do both, that's great. But even if you are one or the other, I think both are very needed. I mean, we get asks for impact reports, so, and they have very strict brand guidelines. So they just need that brand consistency. So we might be bringing a little bit of some additional thinking to layouts and ways they could maybe push their brand a little bit, but that is the ask, is to give them an impact report. They give us the information, they give us their brand guidelines, and so we have to stick to brand consistency. But then also I'm just looking at impact reports. Some clients maybe don't have super strict brand guidelines yet, and it's something we will be helping them with, but it's a bit more open as to, we can push the layout, we can push, it's just taking their colors maybe, but we can push what the layouts and the graphics look like. Or, I mean, a lot of the work that we do is branding and brand transformation. And so it really starts with a strong strategy foundation. But then it is up to the designer to really take that approved strategy and, okay, what does that mean? How does that come out visually? How does that come out verbally? What does that look like? And that would be a more strategic designer, creative designer, than a more executional designer. But I think definitely there is need for both skill set, or both types of design. At Humanity, I would say we do both. We do a lot more of the conceptual strategic side, but once we've set those clients up with their new brand, their brand guidelines, we then can roll it out to brand guidelines. So we're not reinventing everything every time we do a project for them. Sometimes they might just need a social post. They might need like I said, an impact report, or a pop-up banner for an event. So we're not reinventing. We're sticking to those brand foundations that we possibly have built as well.
Awesome. So in this process, I think the communication plays a very vital role, right? So again, like I saw a lot of designers, or maybe creative people, who are very introvert, and they are sort of lacking the communication part of it. I mean, they are like great in their hard skills. They know everything about their craft, but when it comes to soft skills, when it comes to communication, this is where they actually like struggle a lot. So do you have any kind of maybe a blueprint, or a roadmap for them to improve that side of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's 100% true. Even for myself, for a lot of my career as a designer, and I find designers and art directors are much more likely to be introverted. I find copywriters that I've worked with, they are much more extroverted. They are much more the salespeople who can talk about things, communicate, sell things in. But it is a skill every creative needs to know. I mean, you've always got your creative thinking, you've got your rationale. So you need to tell people that. You need to be able to walk people through that. I think for me, it's definitely a skill that can be learned. It's not something you shouldn't think like, oh, well, I'm introverted, I'll just never be good at it. It is a learned skill. You're not born with it. So it is just practice for sure. And I think, honestly, for me, one thing that has helped me is the remote working world environment. Being able to start out, having my notes really helped me think through my presentation. Having the backup of my notes right there without anybody knowing, definitely, I think, built up my confidence skills. So now I just find it much easier. Like, I've got no notes today. I think it's just much easier to talk, or even now in live presentations, because we are back obviously to doing a lot more live presentations. That skill has just been built up. So I think for juniors, if you are working somewhere, mention that to your creative directors or to your managers that you want more opportunity, have them coach you, have them help you. I think also the past few years, we've really seen the explosion of building up a personal brand. So do videos, post videos online, and just that extra practice of speaking, of talking, and your videos might not be great at first. That's okay. We're all learning. but it's still just, it's moments for you to talk about your expertise, talk about things that you've learned, and you will build up that confidence over time, and you will get better at explaining things, at presenting things. And even if you're just talking about yourself, because you need to be able to do that when you're in interviews as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And speaking of like having the balance between the hard and soft skills or presenting you or your work as a creative professional, so do you have any sort of guideline or maybe a helpful advice for the designer on their portfolio? Like, what is the key thing that you think is missing in the designer's world when it comes to their portfolio?
Yeah, and I think it's if you're applying at specific places and specific, say, design agencies, I think it's doing the research as to what types of design that they do. So if they do branding or rebrands, you should have examples of branding in your portfolio, just because that's what the creative director or the hiring manager is going to be looking for. If they do a lot of long format reports, for example, you should have some examples in that, or be able to kind of speak to how you know how to do that kind of work. And then when it comes to portfolios themselves, for me, I am a big believer in having big, bold visuals. I've come across several portfolios or even pitch decks where the creative work is kind of these small, tiny thumbnails. Like, presentation really does matter. So just, even take your photos yourself, or mock-ups, big, beautiful mock-ups, so we can see your work, get excited about the work. And then also, yes, also have an online presence. I've gotten several applications from people where it's just a bunch of images in a Google Drive folder. Like that is a lot of work for a creative director. Creative directors are busy. To have to go through single images in a Google Drive folder can be very time consuming. So really have an online presence, a website. There's a lot of great free or very low cost tools out there now that you can put up your portfolio. You can have an about page with you as well, and just make it easy for people to find you. And also, again, it's part of building your personal brand. Have some social channels where you're posting your work, whether that's LinkedIn or Instagram. That's free, and just make sure that you are building yourself up and building that thought leadership. Even if you think you're not a thought leader right now because you're just starting out. You went to school, you've done proactive work, you have that thinking in everything that you've done. That makes you, even if the beginning, thought leader. So make sure that you are out there and you are promoting that.
Awesome. So again, I have like a very a random question. It's more of like we have again two kind of designers. One who actually went to the design school and learned proper degree from there and have a lot of design context, right? And then they are stepping into the world of design in professional way, right? And then we have another set of designers who do not have formal education degree. They are maybe either engineers or they are into the mechanical side of it, or maybe the electrical engineers and many more fields, right? And without that specific education, design education, they are self-taught, and now they are on the field of design as well. So, what do you think? How can they cover that gap that the student have already, who were actually in the design school and have that context? So, what do you think? The designers who actually come up from like different backgrounds, how can they cover that gap of context that the other students have?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question because I don't think I've ever hired someone who didn't have some sort of creative education or design education, but I've worked with, or I have hired people who didn't start in design. They maybe started in architecture, or they started in engineering or math or something, but during that course, or maybe they even got their degree in math or engineering, but then they realized it wasn't really what they wanted, and then they went back to school and got a creative degree at whether it's OCAD or one of the other schools here in Toronto. And I think they make very interesting and well-rounded creatives because they think differently, but they also have that creative foundation and those principles. So it's not that I wouldn't ever hire someone who doesn't have a creative degree or education, but there are certain things that you need to know, and you have to be able to kind of hit the ground running. And in particular is creative software. So we use the Adobe suite for everything. So I would say, like, at minimum, you would need to know that to be able to just start on projects and start working, and then we can brief you in on projects. And then for design, I mean, ideally, you've got a bit of a background in design principles and what makes good design, and layout and typography theory and skills. So I would say, even if you have an engineering degree, that's great. But there's a few certain things that you do need to learn, and maybe it's not a traditional school diploma degree. Maybe it is online courses, but I think there is some education that you would need to do. And I think I mentioned earlier, where people went to school for me isn't the biggest factor when I'm meeting someone or considering hiring someone. It really is their work. The portfolio is the first thing that I go to. And then if I see that the skills are there that I need, then it also comes down to the person, and will they be someone who's going to fit in with the team, who's going to work well with the team. And so actual education is a little secondary or maybe even tertiary to that decision of who I'm going to hire.
Awesome. Again, good question. When you are looking for the people to hire, or maybe when you are expanding your team, so what kind of candidates are you looking for? It's more of like the generalist who have a bit of experience and a bit of exposure in sort of every field, or are you looking for the specialist who have the deep understanding of a specific, specific topic or maybe specific skill, right? So whenever you are hiring for again, your team, are you looking for generalists or specialists?
Maybe probably a little bit of both, just because like I said, at Humanity, we are full service. So we do advertising, which requires a different way of thinking in terms of conceptualizing and art direction and thinking of a full campaign. And we do a lot of branding, which kind of, it is its own specialty really in its own. But we also do impact reports, like longer reports. We do design websites, social. So what I've found throughout my career is it can be difficult to find a visual creative who is good at advertising, campaign art direction, but who is also very good at branding and design. Like I have come across some, but generally it can be a little bit difficult. So a lot of times when I'm hiring, it's for either a designer who has strong branding design, but also just good layout skills, or I'm looking for an art director who knows how to ideate, who knows how to work with a copywriter. If I can find that someone who is good at both, and I have, and I think we do have some of them at Humanity, but in that sense, more of a design sense, maybe a bit more of a generalism, but with a focus on branding, because we do need that. And then when it comes to more art direction, just how do they ideate? What are their big ideas?
Awesome. So you mentioned a lot of about the impact reports, right? So like, again, with Humanity, how do you guys measure the impact of what have you done with Humanity, like along with clients, or how many people you have impacted positively, or maybe like you have added value in their lives, intentionally and unintentionally? So do you like keep the track of it? Like how many lives you impacted with Humanity?
Yeah, we do kind of the traditional testing afterwards. So whether that was impressions, brand sentiment, brand recognition, that's kind of some of the basic ways that we would test. What I love about what we do at Humanity is we work with so many change makers and purpose-driven brands that have big missions, they have big visions, big ideas for their company or for their cause, for the future. So being able to test some of that afterwards, even internally, like when we get to those final presentations and implementation, just knowing how happy the client is, that it is doing what they wanted it to do, it is bringing their vision to life. There's that, but then also depending on the project and client and budget, doing those brand sentiments and measuring afterwards, like, okay, how many people actually recognize this brand now unaided? How does this new branding make people feel about this company or about that industry? And so hearing some of that great feedback, even, when people feel more pride being part of an organization, or they feel pride being from a certain industry or a certain province, being able to understand that is really satisfying. Or what say it's certain other campaigns that are trying to raise awareness or raise funds or donations, and hearing the increase in funds or donations afterwards is always really important, because we want to make sure that we're doing work that works, that's effective, and is really in service of our clients that come to us with their visions and the problems that they want to solve.
That's awesome. So before we end this, it's more of you being again the expert, being more than a decade of experience, or I think you have more than 15 years of experience. So that's a lot of experience and exposure in the field of design. So do you have any piece of advice for people who are either starting out or those who are looking for actually work? Because either they are laid off, or maybe they just quit their current organizations, but they are looking for work that is more closely aligned with their future goals. So do you have anything to add for them? That would be awesome.
Yeah, and I know it's tricky right now, the industry. I'm sure even in Pakistan, it's the same as here as well. I'm part of some design Slack groups, and I see a lot of the recent grads or new designers who are just I've sent out hundreds of resumes. I'm not hearing anything, and people are getting very discouraged, and it's understandable. And I know even when I first graduated, so yes, it's been more than 15 years. It's not as simple as just, when I think when you're in school and your teachers are talking about it and talking about the industry, you get these big visions and you're so excited and this career that you're going to have, and then you graduate and that job isn't just there. So it's a lot of work to get yourself out there. There's job postings, there's, applying to companies that you really want to work at, the work that you admire, but it's still really, really hard. There's a lot of competition. A lot of companies aren't hiring right now. So it's just keep going and find community, find whether it's other designers, other junior designers, organizations, even just to keep yourself part of the community, to keep yourself in love with the industry, because it can be very easy to get very jaded quickly. And build your personal brand. Get, like I said, your Instagram, your LinkedIn. Just explore, experiment, get yourself out there, build your portfolio, even if it's side projects. Do those research if it is you are looking for a company that is more within your values. Doing that research, connecting with people on LinkedIn, it takes a lot. It does take a lot of effort, and you're going to get probably a lot of no's, but it's trying to make those connections. And again, it goes back to networking and making connections. Even if it's not a right now, they can do something for me right now, or I can do something for you right now. It's building your network, and you never know down the road when I'm going to meet somebody who needs something. I'm like, oh yeah, you know what? I met this person. They would be great for this. So it's just getting yourself out there and doing work on your own. And you may have to pick up other work that's maybe not in the industry, but keep yourself in the industry, in love with the industry, and motivated to keep going and to keep meeting people. And even I think just yourself. You reached out to me for a mentoring session, and then you reached out to me for this podcast. So just again, making those connections and building on them is the biggest thing.
Yeah. Thank you so much for showing up, Carolyn. I really hope and I really wish you best of luck with the humanity and their future goals. I really hope they actually get to the point where the humanity imagined themselves on in the future. Before we end this this beautiful and this deep conversation, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, I'd love to know what are some things that you maybe are struggling with right now, or you're finding is the struggle in your universe in the industry?
Interesting. So I actually struggle a lot in the content creation side as well, where I just am sort of lazy enough to actually get the most out of when it comes to content creation. But the thing that I am currently struggling with, and I'm working on it, is basically the visuals. So, like again, in design, there are a school of thought where they say visuals are not very important. Usability is something that is have more weight when it comes to like visuals. Visuals can be like better down the lane, but it's the usability or it's the UX that actually needs more attention. But I currently think that this is not right. I mean, it can be true for some of the cases, but for mine, it's more of like these are both equally important. I can like work on the usability, but I need to focus on my visuals as well. Because again, the balance that is going to create with the visuals and usability is going to make the great products or the products that are usable to the audience that I'm currently building for. So yeah, these are like the sort of challenges that I'm currently having, and I really hope I'll get done with it. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that you're thinking about that. And I think, I mean, we should have always been accessible for everyone, but I am seeing some momentum to really thinking about accessibility and being usable for all. So I love that you're thinking about that, and I'm sure everyone's kind of going through the same thing as we make this more of a focus, accessibility more of a focus.
Yeah.
So yeah, love that you're already thinking about that.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much, Carolyn, for showing up. I mean, it was amazing have you on the show. And I really hope that people, even if the one person is watching this, will definitely have some value if he's thinking of maybe making his own venture, or he's like struggling with maybe a managerial role or potential he could be a manager. And if he can like think of the problems that he's going to have in the future, and he has like that kind of knowledge, or at least the starting point of at least thinking of these kind of problems and working on them, is going to be very helpful. And thank you so much, Carolyn, for showing up. I'm really grateful to have you.
Thanks, Asad.
All right, thank you, Carolyn. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, you
Bye-bye.
too. Goodbye.